Hey, this is Veronica and welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be going through a sew along for the Holmen dress. This is a dress that has recently been expanded as far as their sizing goes, and it is by the Uncut Pattern Group, and I am very excited to sew it with it. And many thanks to them for reaching out to me to see if I would be able to sew it, and I'm very excited. So I'm going to be using this fabric here. This is like a crepe fabric. I got this fabric from So English, and it is white background with like red roses. It has beautiful drape, as you can see, and I think that this will be perfect for it. I'm going to be lining the top part because the does require some lining. I'm going to be lining the top part just with a basic white cotton, and everything else we'll be making. So can't wait to sew with you. Okay, so I use a projector. So this is the projector dress, and so just so you know, it's not in the exact projector format. It's an AO format. Excuse me. And so as you can see, we've got the pieces here. So there are front bodice here, back bodice. There is a front upper tier. This is the back upper tier. These are the straps. We cut 4 of those. This is the back tier for the top version, and this is for the top version as well. But I'm making the dress, so I'm going to just be cutting essentially all of these. And then on another file, we've got the tiers. This is the lower tier for 2 panels, and this is the lower tier for 3 panels. I'm going to be doing 2 panels, so I'm going to be cutting 2 of these on the fold. So I will not be cutting a lining for the skirt because I feel like the fabric that I chose is thick enough, and I think that it'll be fine. So I'm going to show you how I cut it from my projector now. Okay, so I have my camera so that you can see the top view, but I didn't realize that that it had turned so that it was in a portrait mode versus landscape, and I couldn't figure out how to turn it the right way for this video. And then I noticed that you can't really see everything that I'm doing. So I have the Epson Brightlink 45i, and it is projecting onto top down onto my cutting table. My cutting table is about 3 feet high off of the table. I'm using the Tulip Pink rotary cutter, and I am just cutting all of the pieces here. I have this sped up so that this could just go a little bit faster. And because you can't really see what I'm cutting, I'm going to go ahead and cut this section a little bit short, but I'm using chalk to make sure that I mark all of the areas that I need to mark on my pattern pieces. I cut out the lining piece first, and then I went in and cut out the actual fabric that I decided that I was going to use for the piece. I'll do further videos at another time about how I use my projector, and hopefully they will be way more clear than what this is right now. All right, friends, so now that we've cut the pattern out, it is time to take a look at the directions and begin to piece it together. I haven't done a dress like this before. I am absolutely going to go through this one. Again, this is the Holmen Top and Dress by the Uncut Project. I am loving this this like whole little setup here that they've got as far as like this mood. It's very romantic. It's really giving Secret Garden vibes. Okay, so the Holmen dress, I love that they gave a little bit of history behind the design, and it was inspired by the Holmen area in Copenhagen, where Anna and Isabel have biked alongside its canals and around its historic buildings in all seasons of the year. I mean, like, doesn't that really just transport you to Copenhagen? Because, like, I feel like I should be on somebody's bike over there. It's designed to be easy to move around, which I love. It's obviously a braless pattern, so that back piece is going to have to hold the girls up, and I'm here for it, you know. It's designed for the advanced beginner to intermediate sewist, and I love that. The trickier elements, they say, are the pattern gathering in the front and back and creating the adjusting straps. So I'm good. I feel like very confident in this. It's gonna be easy breezy. I will be using a gathering foot on my Bernina to help me with my gathering. So there's two versions. I'm going to be making the dress version today. The dress version has the 2 tiers. One of my tiers is a little bit shorter. So we'll see how long it is because I ran out of fabric. This is the tester version. So a lot of these measurements are missing. But these first set of measurements are the original sizing. And then they expanded the sizing to include the second set of measurements. So we're going to keep going. They filled all this in for the final version, which is excellent, excellent. Coming down here, I love how they use give the definitions of the techniques, because oftentimes if you are a self-taught sewist, you may not have like learned the terminology. So I really love that they do include this information here, and that they are specifying that the defined terms are in bold. First time mentioned that in the instructions. So if you need to come back here to take a look, then you can. So tools, you need a bodkin, which is a metal tool. It's basically what you use to pull the elastic through. I have one of those. A darner, which is also used to pull elastic through, or a loop turner. You don't necessarily need all 3. You really just need one of these. The seam allowance is 3/8 of an inch. Because I'm in the US, I use inches. So we're going to keep going. As far as the main fabrics, lightweight to medium woven, I'm using a lighter weight woven, and my lining, I chose to line it in just kind of like a shirting white cotton. Because I use my projector, I don't necessarily need to use any of this. I did use the AO format for my projector, and I did say that during cutting. These are how they have these things labeled. These are the pieces. All right, so this part I love here, right? You've got the dimensions so that you can save paper. I'm all about being as green as I possibly can. Very, very easy. Okay, so these are the cutting layouts. I don't think I cut my layouts anything like this, because Rebel, that's who I am. Maybe if I'd used their cutting layout, then maybe I would have been able to fit all of the fabric, because I do have fabric left over. Okay, so more cutting layouts, more cutting layouts. There's a lot of options for cutting. So here we get into it. For those who are against stay stitching, I get it. It can be a little bit tedious, but I highly recommend stay stitching your bodice top, because that is going to make a very big difference in how it holds the structure. And this is honestly pretty straightforward. I was just a little concerned with not necessarily the straps. We've got 4 straps here, but how the straps are going to be added. But this is a pretty straightforward pattern. I will be referring to the instructions as I go through it. So let's get ready to sew, friends. Okay, so before I get started to sew, I have taken my my bobbin out, and I do need to do a little bit of cleaning up, so I will show you a little bit of what that looks like before I get started sewing, as well as some of the other things that I have out that make it a little more convenient. Okay, so this is the inside of my Bernina's like little bobbin area. I have already freshly changed my needle from my last project, but I still need to just kind of get in here to sweep it out to make sure. And as you can see, there's like gunk like all in here that I need to clean out. I'm actually going to go ahead and just turn my machine on so that you can see. But like, we're looking a little dirty in here. If your machine is dirty, like I've got threads in here, then it is more likely to jam, and you don't want that. Okay, so now that she is no longer looking hella dusty, we're looking nice and clean, it's time to throw in a little bit of oil, because my machine does not function very well when she is ashy. So we're going to get some of her oil and we're going to oil her down and then reload the bobbin. I had to change colors of my threads because I'm sewing with white today, so I will be doing that as well as wiping her down so that she's nice and clean and ready to work. Okay, so the first step for getting this project together is to stay stitch the entire front as well as back pieces. So that's what I'm doing here. Is I'm just doing a stay stitch on all of my front and back pieces, and I stay stitch both the lining pieces as well as my main pieces. This is something that I have learned is a must, especially when you're using a fabric that is as delicate as the one that I'm using. This fabric will stretch if you do not stay stitch it, so I'm really happy that I did do that. There was a point in time where I didn't stay stitch, and that point in time is now over. So this is me stay stitching the back piece. I've already done the front piece, okay, so the next thing that you're going to do is line up your front piece and your back pieces right sides together to sew down the short sides. And then after you're done doing that, you do that with the lining piece as well. Then you grab your straps and you just put the right sides together and sew straight down. You have the seam allowance already added in. So I've done that with all 4 of my pieces. There are a total of 4 pieces. You can use clips or you can use pins if that is something that will help you out. I did end up clipping these because this type of fabric, like if you iron it, I mean, it might hold a crease, but it likely will not hold that crease together, which is a nuisance. So I did go ahead and I added 4 clips in here, and I found that that made it easy enough for me to go ahead and sew that together. So after you're done sewing it together, you're going to want to make sure that you trim down your seam allowance so that it's easier to turn. So I'm using this here rotary cutter that has like the pinking shear finish. I will link to it in the description, and I'm just simply cutting that down, and it's going to make it a lot easier for me to turn. So, okay, there it is. And y'all, turning these straps was just not my favorite thing. I started out using the actual like long turner thing, and then I just went to use my handy dandy, trusty, never fails safety pin. It was way easier to do it this way. The straps are super thin, which I absolutely love on this pattern. And so I wanted to make sure I kept that as it was. And this made it just so much easier for me to turn. So I highly recommend just using your basic safety pin to turn your straps. Also, big shout out to the Corny Rainbow, my girlfriend Nefertiti. That's where I got this sweatshirt from. She makes these and they are phenomenal. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to be doing is we're going to be attaching the front to the back of the yoke pieces. So you want to make sure that you line this up the right way. As you can see, the first time I lined it up incorrectly, and you're going to be sewing down the short sides again, and these pieces will be gathered. So to gather this, what I decided to do was not follow the directions that are in the template because I love using my gathering foot. The gathering foot is the number 86 or the ruffler for Bernina. And this is like one of my favorite feet because it makes gathering so much easier. And so I just went ahead and I installed it. I did go ahead and make sure that I could tinker with the settings as far as how much fabric it gathered because I wanted to make sure that it matched the top piece. And so I gathered that front piece because it only calls for gathering the front piece first, and then you gather the second piece, or rather the back piece, at a different time. But yeah, look at this gather. I mean, phenomenal. Look at how beautiful that gather is. But now it's the time to attach the yoke to the first tier, and so I lined up my seams so that it would be easier, and then I'm going to go ahead and stitch that together. So here I am stitching this together. I'm just using the basic, making sure that I have my seam allowance using a basic straight stitch. I went ahead and switched back to my 1C foot so so that I could go ahead and do that. It is completely lined up. There is a curve, so you want to make sure that you ease on into that curve nicely, and you want to make sure that your gather is protected and it doesn't get stretched out. And if you're not sure if you gathered too much or too little, just make sure that you line up that top piece with that bottom piece. And if it's too much, or if you have gathered too much, it'll be too short, or if you didn't gather enough, it'll be too long. And you can make those adjustments later on as you're sewing, and that is a-okay. And also, like, note to myself, the next time that I'm recording this, I definitely need to clear out my space, because looking at this, I'm like, wow, I've got so much stuff on my sewing desk. All right, so now it is time to attach your lining piece, which I have right here. And so I'm spreading this out, and you're going to attach your lining piece to the main fabric. So I want to make a special note here that when you're attaching the lining, and if you're following the directions, right, you want to make sure that you do not actually sew where you're going to put your straps in at. This is something that I did. So make sure that you're going ahead and you're clipping things together, especially if you're using a fabric that can stretch or move, and kind of get a little bit warped. So I like to clip at the seams where they're supposed to be lined up, so that I can make sure that I am on the right doing it the right way, essentially, right? And I'm doing it the right speed and everything like that. And then, of course, I did add some clips to where the straps are going to go. And then I went ahead, spread it out just to make sure everything lined up right. So everything is lined up. And so to sew, I did make sure that my lining fabric was down first. I chose to do that because my lining fabric is just a basic quilting cotton, and it does not stretch. There's like virtually no mechanical stretch in it at all. So I knew that as I was guiding the fabric through, that it wouldn't have any issues stretching. So you're going to go ahead and sew together the front pieces first. And this is me sewing together those front pieces first. This right here is the arm side. And so I did, I don't know if you saw that, but I did go ahead and sew together where that strap was going to go. This fabric that is on top is like, so I don't want to call it slinky, but y'all, this fabric is out here moving and shaking. So I definitely went very, very slow. I love the speed options on my Bernina, so that I don't have to only go one speed, which I feel like really helped me out an awful lot. So I did go really slow, making sure that I went around those curves the right way. So yeah. Okay, so this is around the time that I realized that I made a mistake when I was going to add these straps in. So in the corners is where you're going to be adding the straps. So as you can see, I'm trying to stick it through there. Y'all, it does not go through because I sewed it shut. So I did have to whip out my handy dandy seam tearer so that I could get it through. And I don't know why I kept like pushing it through, thinking that I was going to make it go through. I did leave like the tiniest of holes, but it just wasn't enough. So I am going to be seam ripping that out. And then I actually have to seam rip pretty much all of the areas. I've got to tear all of them, so that way I can get those straps in place. So here I am seam ripping. I mean, like, I do not love my seam ripper. So there we go. So I had to do that for all of my strap placement, just to make sure that it got in there the right way. So just note that as you're sewing, either add your straps in the placement that they're going to be as you're adding in the lining. So that way you're only doing this, you're essentially skipping this step or tying it in. Um, so that way you don't have the same issue that I had here. All right, y'all. So I was about to lose bobbin chicken, so I went ahead and wound a new bobbin. And I know that on YouTube and like on these videos, we like to show the things that we only do right. But y'all, I don't know what I did wrong with this bobbin, because then it started to thread from the bottom and it came off looking like this. Fail. Epic, epic fail. And I'm not going to deal with that at all. So I did just go ahead and open up some new bobbins, and I did go ahead and grab this. I love these jumbo bobbins from Bernina. They make it so easy. So I rewound the bobbin. It was fine. Now it is time to go ahead and make sure that the back is done, because you've got to add the straps in at the back as well. So I actually misunderstood the directions when it came time to do the back straps. I don't know why I thought that I was supposed to sew them together. You are not. So just make sure that you know that too. So you're adding the back straps in. These are two separate pieces because they tie together in the back. They are not one. I don't know, again, I don't know why I misread that instruction. So I'm having to seam tear again because, again, I sewed that together. And again, if you want to avoid this or kind of skip a step, just make sure that you're adding in the straps as you are putting together your main bodice piece as well as your liner. And you can avoid all of this. Okay, so at this point I got it together. This was my final little ad here for the back bodice straps. And now you've got to just sew it straight down and across the back to add your lining piece in. And so this was my first little fit test. I just wanted to make sure. At this point in time, I knew that my straps were a little too long and I was going to have to shorten them. But I think it's so cute. Look at how cute that is. And come on, sports bra. Obviously it fits very different without the sports bra on. But yeah, loving the fit, loving how it looks, loving this fabric for this project as well. It was like, so good. And now it's time to finish the edges. I'm using a G here. Okay, so those edges that I was working on were the side seams for the skirt piece. Now I'm gathering the skirt piece at the top. I'm using my ruffler foot number 86 here. And as you can see, we've got a beautiful gather happening. It is everything and amazing. So the first time that I did the ruffle, I felt like it was like ruffling too much. So I did go ahead and loosen it up so that it wasn't gathering as much fabric. So I just basically did that by hand. And then this is after I used my number 66 foot for the hem, which looks beautiful. All right, it's finished. I thought that this was such a beautiful, beautiful pattern. I mean, look, we're giving romantic bicycle ride. We're giving taking to the UK. We're giving Secret Garden on a dress. Like, it's serving boobs. Like, let's get into this boob. We've got both front cleavage, side cleavage. We've got some back happening. Like, I'm here for it. I am living for this dress, friends. I love it. I love it so much.
All right, friends, so let's talk about it. I've got on the dress now. The dress is beautiful, and in truth, I really love it. Construction was fairly easy. It was pretty straightforward. There are a couple of things that I would have done differently if I was not following the directions. I'm not saying the tutorial was bad, but there are just some things that I've learned over the years that make it a little bit easier to do some of the things that the pattern has called for. So the first thing that I would have done differently is, as I was adding the lining in, and as I was sewing that in, I would have just sewn the straps in all at once versus going back. I don't know if you saw that I had to unpick where I was sewing and attaching the bodice to the lining. I had to unpick in some areas so that I could get the straps in, and I would have just done that all in one step versus having to go back and redo it. One of the other things that I would have done differently is how the lining is. The lining is just kind of like free flowing. It's not attached at the bottom to anything, which isn't necessarily bad, but because I can be kind of weird about things on my skin, I would have just preferred to just make sure that I sewed it into the next tier so that that was just very seamless. So those are two things that I would have just done a little bit differently. As far as fit goes, I think it fits well. I had to shorten the straps, and I actually think I'm going to go back and take my straps up a little bit more. I've already taken about 1/2 inch off to maybe 3/4 inch, and I think I could go up about another maybe 1/2 inch. I do think that wearing it is a little tricky. As you can see, I'm sitting down and I'm serving, like, y'all, I'm serving boobalicious, which I don't particularly have a problem with because, I mean, if you've got them, flaunt them if you want to, right? But I do think that I would have just shortened this. I do think that wearing where it hits is a little weird. So for size purposes right now, I am a 40D, and I'm not exactly sure if this like top part is supposed to like enclose all of my boobs or if it's supposed to kind of cut in the middle. And the reason why I say that is because the tie in the back definitely makes it so the dress comes together, right? Without the tie in the back, we would be flopping all over the place. I do feel like it would be a little bit more supportive if this was a little bit longer, especially for like many of the plus size women. We have larger breasts and kind of need a little bit more support. So I do think that this could have been a little bit longer so that it could have provided a little bit more support, because like it's like cutting my nipple line, and like I've got boobs down here that are just like kind of hanging out. Like, what do we do? So those are some things that I see as far as the pattern goes, just as far as it fits. My sizing, I did a size 46 up top because my upper bust measures. So one, I have a petite measurement for my shoulders. Two, my upper bust is way smaller than my bust, and I didn't think it was necessary to do like a full bust adjustment on something like this because, well, y'all, I don't really have anything that's like, there's no fabric up here. So I sized it down so that I could make sure that it kind of hit properly up here, and then I graded out. I did do this skirt in the size that I aligned with for my skirt measurement. I think it was like a 58. I'm not sure off the top of my head. I will make sure that it is in the description below, the sizes that I used. Let's see, the feet that I used to create this and the machines that I used my Bernina B590. The feet that I used the 1C. I also used the 66 because instead of hemming it like it had called for, I went ahead and just did a rolled hem because one, I stand for a rolled hem, and two, it was just easier to make sure that all of those woven threads got tucked in and are staying that way. So I also use the ruffler foot number 86, and that made such a difference in my gathers. I do think I did an exceptional job on gathering. I know that some might have the question of, well, how do you know what to set your gathering foot to in order to make sure that you get the right gather for the distance? Because when you use the gathering foot, it's not like you can kind of move it along like you would if you were sewing and using a basting stitch to gather. But it was literally by trial and error. Oftentimes I just kind of got it right on the first try, which yay. So a review of the actual style, y'all, I love it. This is definitely a piece that I will make again, and I will make those notes as far as construction as well as shortening this here area, because I really love it. I do not love wearing a strapless bra. I do feel like I'm supported just enough. I would feel a little bit more supported if I shorten the straps a little bit more. I think that this dress, as the pattern as a dress, is super versatile. Like if you check out my shorts, you'll see how I style it in 3 different ways, going from a very casual spring or summer look into how you can transition it to both fall and winter, which I think that's really key as far as the versatility of a pattern, right? Will I make it again? Absolutely. I'm kind of interested to see how a more structured woven will work with it. Today I used a fabric that is from So English. It has such beautiful drape, and I really am loving the romantic flowiness that I'm getting along with it. But I also wonder what like an Ankara wax fabric would offer as far as structure goes here. So I will be trying that out as well. That is all I have as far as a review of the pattern. I think it was great. I do think that it is an advanced beginner / intermediate, namely because if you have experience, you would likely construct it a little bit differently as well. And I do think that the amount of gathering as well as the turning of these straps, like y'all, I love the thinness of this strap here. Like it is serving me like romantic shoulder, get into it, right? But it can be a little hard to turn. I originally started out using one of the turner tools, and I was like, there's no way this is working. So I had to break out my handy dandy safety pin, and we got it through that way very easily. But those 2 features definitely do make the pattern a little on the harder side. I wouldn't say that it's a hard pattern, and I do think that it's for an adventurous beginner, someone who has a little bit more time. As far as time that it took for me to construct, it was longer for me to put together, namely because I was recording for YouTube as well as doing a reel at the same time. So I do think that it's probably about an hour and a half to 2 hour project that you could knock it out. I do think that cutting it out with my projector probably limited my time quite a bit. I love the way that they have the measurements for the actual tiers, and I think I'm gonna actually make another one and then just throw in another tier just because, right? Because why not? Again, and I said this earlier in the video, I didn't exactly have enough of the fabric that I used to make the full second tier. So mine is actually a little bit shorter than what it typically would have been. I'm sure that I cut off about 2 inches because I was not playing Tetris properly with my pattern pieces. That's all I can say. But yeah, I love this pattern. I think they did an excellent job with it. Very grateful and very excited about more patterns extending their sizing, because I do believe that everyone's size should be included. So don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Make sure that you turn on the bell so that way as I go live or as I update, you can be notified, and tag a friend who needs to subscribe as well. I hope you're all having a phenomenal day, and I guess we'll sew later.